Welcome back. Now, feeling anxious is a normal human response, but it's when the worry, nervousness and unease starts affecting day-to-day life that anxiety becomes an issue.
But what is it exactly, and what are the symptoms of anxiety? How can you treat it? GP Dr. Brian Higgins joins us this morning. Hi, Brian.
Hi, good morning.
A very
Morning,
interesting
Brian.
topic to discuss.
Yeah.
Can you define what anxiety is for us?
So I suppose you have a list of anxiety disorders. And what we're talking about today is just generalised anxiety. So generalised anxiety disorders, when your anxiety is bad enough to interfere with your quality of life 3 days, kind of most days of the week for over about a 6-month period, you can say, OK, there's something going wrong here.
Okay,
What are the general causes and how prevalent is it?
So it's really prevalent. About 1 in 4 people at some point in their life will suffer with bad anxiety or an anxiety disorder. Can you prevent it? You can. Certainly things in modern day life, like just the pace and hecticness of modern day life, predisposes people to anxiety. So really to prevent it, what you need is an awareness of an anxiety and an awareness to know how you're feeling, to be able to say, OK, I'm anxious, and then be able to say, OK, I'm anxious, this is causing me a problem. I need to do something about it. Like, I'm anxious today coming in here, and I have those symptoms. I have I feel a bit nervous. I can feel my heart coming on, and I'm, a bit
but that
shaky.
will dissipate.
And that'll dissipate, and it doesn't stop me from doing anything. But if that were to say stop me from going outside most days of the week, then I have a problem.
Then you've an issue. And in fact, with anxiety, I would imagine it's quite difficult to spot in yourself. It might be other people, friends and family, who might trigger some things up. But what are those symptoms, physically and mentally, psychologically?
Mentally is just being nervous. And people get low, they don't want to go outside, they feel down on themselves, their self-esteem goes. That's the mental side of it. A lot of times when people come to me with anxiety, they're not coming with feeling nervous. They're coming with palpitations, a feeling of choking, shortness of breath, physical symptoms. They think there's something physically wrong, where it's not. It's the symptoms of their anxiety that they're picking up on without realising that it's actually something inside.
Can you just differentiate if there is a difference between general anxiety that you're talking about and what people call panic attacks? Are they one and the same, or are they different?
They're different. They overlap. They're both part of anxiety disorders. What panic attacks are when your anxiety gets to a point that you really have a dump of adrenaline in your system. Something scares you, so you have this dump of adrenaline, you feel like you're going to have a heart attack, your stomach is irritating, your hands get sweaty, you get short of breath, and you just feel like you need to get out of a situation or you're really going to die, and it really feels like people are going to die. And I suppose that's something we can probably chat about again, because they overlap.
But it's a distinct...
But they are distinct, yeah.
Can anxiety be serious?
It can. Anxiety itself can be serious for the people who have it. It can affect their social life, affect relationships, affect their work. And also it can be really serious because of the way people learn to deal with their anxiety. People will start to drink because drinking is relaxing and calms you down and dampens on symptoms of anxiety. Or people can get dependence on medications such as benzodiazepines, which are relaxants that people will can take, and they'll suddenly feel better. But over time, both of those things will cause longer-term issues.
Sure, and
so the idea of taking a Valium or something that provides short-term relief isn't necessarily the right thing to do.
No, it's
even
it's
a severe
definitely
case of anxiety.
There can be times where a really short course of benzodiazepines, can help people, but they're short courses. They're not long-term solutions. So I tend to avoid them if at all possible. And sometimes it feels cruel because you have this instant solution, but what you have to say is, OK, do I want this person to feel better in 20 minutes, or do I want them to feel better in 6 months' time and have a good quality of life?
Of course.
And sometimes with anxiety, it's that long-term view, which is very difficult for the person with anxiety to accept. Yeah. But that's the best way to manage and help people.
Aside from treating it chemically, one of the other poor coping strategies, I guess, would be just not dealing with it, pushing it down, sort of suppressing your negative emotions, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So the best way to look at treating anxiety is look at it in segments. There's the self-help segment, what can you do yourself? Things like mindfulness, which is just about 10 minutes a day of shutting off your phone, having some time to yourself and having some time to do nothing, and just phasing out all those noises from life and just listening to yourself and seeing how you feel and being aware of those feelings. That can help a huge amount. And exercise, so important, because it just gets rid of those anxiety chemicals of the body and will reduce the nervousness. Then there's the next level, which is the psychological treatment, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, which can be done by most counsellors, psychotherapists or psychologists. And then when people are coming to
Maybe
me...
you just explain what that is.
Cognitive behavioural therapy is cognitive, so mind, behaviour, and then treatment. And what it is about realising those behaviours that you're having and developing mental ways to deal with them. So recognising what you're doing and then changing your behaviours.
And it's a collaborative effect as well, because it's a collaborative effort between the patient and their counsellor. And
Absolutely.
so you do feel in control of your emotions, because it is going to be up to you, ultimately, to manage your emotions.
And it's really hard because change is difficult. Because for years you might deal with something in a certain type of way, and that's causing anxiety. And all of a sudden you have to change your outlook and change your behaviour. Excuse me. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And finally, their medication does have a role with anxiety. The benzodiazepines like Valium, I really don't think do for the vast majority of people, but certainly some antidepressants can be really life-changing for people because they reduce that daily level of anxiety and are just a helping hand for people to deal with their anxiety over time.
There you go.
And that's a case of going talking to your GP, explaining your symptoms, let them make a decision as to what level on the scale you're at.
Absolutely. So your GP, it's a team effort. Most of the time when somebody comes to see me with anxiety symptoms, I'll do a basic workup. There are a couple of medical illnesses, sometimes something called hyperthyroidism, where your thyroid level is too high, can make you feel very anxious. And GPs in general will outrule all of those symptoms, so you're not missing something physical. And then you can sit down with somebody and say, okay, physically you are fine. This is an anxiety problem, and let's deal with it.
Okay. And I think as well, Tommy touched on the fact that, and you mentioned as well, Brian, 1 in 4 people would suffer from anxiety. I would argue that it would be 4 in 4 people who would suffer from some sort of anxiety throughout our lives. I mean, it can be a trigger like bereavement or stress in work.
Absolutely.
So how can we tell that our anxiety is sort of on the normal spectrum versus that we might perhaps need to go and avail of the services there for us?
The big difference is how often do you have it? Is it going on for longer than, say, 6 months? Okay. And is it affecting your daily life? Do you feel like you are not seeing your friends, not seeing your family, not going to work because of your anxiety? And if that is the case, go look for help. Everybody should be doing mindfulness. A lot of schools now, instead of detention, are doing mindfulness, or even younger children do 10 minutes of mindfulness a day.
My wife's a primary school teacher, and they've started doing mindfulness with kids as young as 5 now in primary schools. And it sounds like a little bit, Brian, that you can preempt these things by doing some of the, before you get to the sort of level of going to your GP, or before you get to the level of taking medication. But things like exercise and mindfulness, if something were to come along, financial difficulties or a family situation that would precipitate it, you'd at least be sort of trained up.
Exactly. And you have those basic skills that can help you deal with your anxiety. But sometimes people are just so wound up. They're such balls of nerves that they can't even engage on that sort of level. And their lives are just really falling apart, and their self-esteem is in the floor.
It must be a horrible feeling for people with severe anxiety.
And you mentioned OCD and phobias. Does this go as far as sort of fear of flying? Maybe somebody who can't go and visit their family in another country because they're afraid of... I mean, are we at that level of phobias and things that stop you living your life to the full?
Phobias are a little bit different because phobias are specific. Somebody is...
You get off the plane and you're okay.
Yeah. Somebody can climb a mountain or stand over the edge of a building, but
some people won't get on the plane. That's the whole thing, isn't it?
They won't get it, yeah.
And then phobias are a little bit different. Same cognitive behavioural therapy, and some psychologists are brilliant at managing phobias, and they come under the anxiety disorders. Okay. So they overlap. So somebody with generalised anxiety might have phobias or...
Brian,
Brian, I'm glad you got over your anxiety and joined us this morning. Don't know what we'd have done without you.
Thanks a million.
Hey,
really good tips there.